It always starts quietly. No alarms, no breaking news. Just a small dot moving across a dark screen. Somewhere on Earth, a telescope scans the night sky the way it always does. Frame by frame, pixel by pixel, looking for things we've seen 1,000 times before. Asteroids, comets, cold rocks drifting through endless space. And at first, this one looks no different. A faint object enters the ecliptic, barely visible, easy to miss. It's given a name that sounds ordinary, technical, safe 3I/Atlas. Just another traveler from deep space, another line in a database, another number in a long list of discoveries. No one feels fear, no one feels wonder. Yet, because discovery doesn't announce itself with thunder, it whispers. And sometimes we don't hear the whisper until it's already too late. The object is moving fast, faster than most things we track, cutting through the solar system at an angle that feels sharp, not wrong, just unfamiliar. Astronomers run the first calculations: speed, trajectory, distance. Everything checks out, at least it seems to. They tag it as interstellar, a visitor from beyond our sun's influence. That alone is rare, but not impossible. We've seen interstellar objects before. They come, they pass, they leave, no drama. So the data is logged. The observation window opens, and life goes on. But in the background, something feels off. Not enough to stop the process. Not enough to raise flags. Just enough to make someone pause. A graduate student notices it first. Not because they're smarter, but because they're tired. And tired people notice patterns others ignore. They're reviewing the light curve, the way the object reflects sunlight as it spins. It should be messy, irregular, chaotic. That's what rocks do, but this one isn't messy. The brightness rises, then falls. Rises, then falls. Not perfectly, but close enough to feel intentional. The student checks again. Maybe it's rotation, maybe it's shape. They pull up models, run simulations. None of them fit cleanly. They shrug it off. Space is weird, and most strange things turn out to be boring. Still, the note goes into the log. One sentence. Nothing dramatic. Just a question mark. As days pass, more telescopes turn toward 3I/Atlas. The object drifts deeper into view. Clearer now. Brighter. Still quiet. Still unimportant. But the numbers keep coming in, and with every update, the margins get tighter. The orbit is stable. Too stable. Interstellar objects usually wobble. They carry scars from old stars. Gravitational trauma. This one doesn't. Its path is smooth. Almost careful. Like it knows where it's going. Again, no one says that out loud. Scientists don't talk like that. They talk in decimals, in probabilities, in cautious language. But humans still sit behind those screens. Humans still feel unease. Someone compares the trajectory to known stellar systems. Nothing matches. Not nearby stars, not distant ones. The origin point stretches backward, and backward, and backward, until it disappears into statistical fog. No home, no clear past. Just motion, a rock with no memory. Or no history we understand. Another detail slips into the logs. Reflectivity is higher than expected. Not extreme, just strange. The surface seems to respond to light differently, almost selectively, as if some angles matter more than others, as if the object prefers certain orientations. That makes no sense, so again, it's noted and ignored. This is how discoveries almost die. Not with rejection, but with routine. Because the universe throws a lot at us, and we can't chase every shadow. But 3I/Atlas keeps showing up every night, every dataset, consistent, quietly persistent. The name begins to circulate. Not publicly, just in emails, just in side conversations. Have you looked at Atlas again? I ran the numbers twice. It's probably nothing. Probably. That word does a lot of work in science. The object crosses deeper into the ecliptic plane. That's when observation increases. More eyes, better instruments, sharper data, and sharper questions. The light curve tightens. The variations become cleaner. Still not perfect, but close enough to make pattern recognition impossible to ignore. This isn't noise. Noise is random. This feels organized. No one says artificial. Not yet. That word is radioactive. But the silence around the data grows heavier. Meetings get longer. Emails get shorter. There's a shift in tone. Not fear, focus, as if everyone senses they're standing near something fragile, something that could shatter if named too soon. Then comes the moment, the one that never makes headlines. A senior astronomer reopens the raw data. Not the cleaned version, not the processed graphs, the raw feed. They notice something small, so small it feels stupid to mention. A timing discrepancy. The brightness changes don't drift. They align. Across different telescopes, different locations, different atmospheric conditions. The same pulse at the same time, seconds apart, globally synchronized. That shouldn't happen. Natural objects don't care about our clocks, but this one does. Or at least, it acts like it does. The astronomer doesn't panic. They don't smile either. They sit back, and for the first time, they don't see a rock. They see behavior. Still, no conclusions, just deeper watching. Because if history has taught us anything, it's that the universe doesn't owe us comfort. 3. I/Atlas keeps moving, closer to the sun, closer to scrutiny. Still silent, still unnamed in public. But something has changed. The discovery phase is over. And whatever this is, it has our full attention now. So we keep watching. We keep recording. And we keep asking the question that sits beneath every line of data. Not out loud. Not yet, but it's there, waiting. What exactly did we just find? And more importantly, what happens when it knows we're watching? At first, the math feels comforting. Numbers always do. They don't panic. They don't imagine. They don't lie. So when 3I/Atlas keeps moving deeper into the solar system, scientists do what they trust most. They calculate again, and again, and again. Every orbit has a story. Every object leaves a fingerprint in its path. Gravity pulls. Stars tug. Planets bend trajectories over millions of years. Nothing moves freely for long, so when the trajectory of 3I/Atlas is mapped, the expectation is simple. Find the bend, find the scar, find the past. But the math comes back clean, too clean. Its speed makes sense, its distance checks out. But the angle is wrong. Not wrong like an error. Wrong like a decision. 3. I/Atlas doesn't drift into the solar system the way most visitors do. It doesn't fall inward, pulled helplessly by the sun. It slices through. A sharp line across the solar plane, almost perpendicular, almost defiant. The ecliptic is a crowded highway. Planets formed there. Debris lingers there. Everything moves in roughly the same flat dance. But this object doesn't join the dance. It crosses it cleanly, like it was never meant to stay. Someone overlays known interstellar paths. Oumuamua, Borisov, wild, but familiar. They came in fast. They left faster. Messy trajectories. Chaotic exits. 3. I/Atlas is different. Its path doesn't wobble. It doesn't hesitate. There's no evidence of panic or capture. Just motion, purposeful motion. The models stretch backward in time. Years. Centuries. Thousands of years. The math keeps holding. No nearby star system fits. No known stellar nursery explains the approach angle. No gravitational slingshot accounts for the precision. It's as if the object wasn't thrown here, but sent through. That thought never makes it into an official report. But it lingers, unspoken, heavy. Late at night, someone runs a simulation without one assumption. They remove randomness. They treat the object not as debris, but as something guided. The simulation locks in instantly. The path stabilizes. The numbers relax. The math breathes. That's when discomfort sets in, because the equations don't argue anymore. They agree. And agreement is dangerous when you don't like the answer. Of course, there are explanations. There are always explanations. Unknown stellar encounters, dark matter influences, statistical outliers. The universe is large enough to hide mistakes, but explanations usually come with trade-offs. Fix one problem and you create another. Every attempt to explain the path naturally introduces chaos somewhere else. But 3 I/Atlas refuses chaos. It moves like it knows the rules. Better than we do. Another detail emerges. The object's velocity relative to the sun is odd, not extreme, not slow. Optimized, as if arriving with just enough speed to observe, but not enough to escape immediately. It lingers, not captured, just present. The sun doesn't own it, but it allows the visit. That's when the language starts to shift, quietly, subtly. Emails replace trajectory with approach. Charts replace random vector with entry angle. Words matter, because words shape perception, and perception shapes fear. Someone asks a simple question during a meeting. If this were intentional, what would the path accomplish? The room goes silent, because no one wants to answer that. The path offers visibility, maximum exposure to the inner solar system, close passes near major planets, clean observational lines. If you wanted to study this system, this would be the way in. Another scientist counters quickly. It's coincidence. It has to be. But even as they say it, the words feel thin. Because coincidence usually looks messy. And this doesn't. The object's inclination relative to the solar plane is recalculated using independent software. Different teams, different countries. Same result. The angle is precise within tiny margins. No drift, no correction, no sign of struggle. That's not how rocks behave. Rocks tumble. They spin unevenly. They react. This object responds, as if it anticipated forces before encountering them. Someone jokes nervously, maybe it's just lucky. No one laughs, because luck doesn't last this long. As 3I/Atlas moves closer to the Sun, solar radiation pressure should alter its path slightly. Photons push. Even tiny pushes matter over time. But the data shows something strange. Micro adjustments, subtle corrections, so small they're easy to miss, but consistent, like someone gently nudging a compass needle back on course. The numbers don't scream, they whisper. And whispers are harder to ignore. The idea of intention is dangerous, not because it's unbelievable, but because it changes everything. If the path is chosen, then the object has awareness. If the object has awareness, then observation is no longer passive. We are no longer just watching space. Space might be watching back. Officially, nothing changes. Press releases stay calm. Language stays neutral. An unusual interstellar object. Further study required. But inside research labs, the tone is different. There's tension, not panic. Tension. The kind that comes before understanding breaks. One scientist puts it best in a private message. I don't feel like we're tracking something anymore. I feel like we're following it. That feeling spreads. Quietly, uncomfortably. 3. I/Atlas doesn't slow. It doesn't speed up. It doesn't react to our attention. It just keeps moving. Exactly as predicted. That's the worst part. Because when something unknown behaves predictably, it means it's playing by rules we haven't learned yet. And the universe has never been kind to those who assume they understand the rules too early. The path continues, straight, clean, unapologetic, through the heart of our system. And with every calculation, one question grows heavier. Was this path chosen, or are we still lying to ourselves because coincidence feels safer than design? Because if this was intentional, then the discovery wasn't the object. The discovery was the moment it decided to come here. And that realization changes what the next data point means. It changes what the next anomaly suggests. And it changes what silence might imply. Because paths don't exist in isolation. They lead somewhere. And 3I/Atlas is already on its way, whether we're ready or not. At first, everyone expects chaos. That's how space works. As an object moves closer to the sun, light becomes violent. Radiation hits uneven surfaces. Ice cracks. Dust explodes outward. Brightness spikes, then crashes. Nothing smooth, nothing clean. So when 3I/Atlas begins to brighten, no one is surprised. They've seen this before. A cold body wakes up. Sunlight peels it open, layer by layer. The screens glow brighter. The graphs stretch upward. Normal, comforting, until they aren't. Because after the initial rise, something strange happens. The brightness stops acting wild. It settles. Not flat, not constant, but controlled. The light curve, normally a messy heartbeat, begins to repeat itself. Up, down, up, down. Not fast, not dramatic. Measured like breathing. At first, the pattern is subtle, easy to ignore. A gentle rise in reflectivity, a gentle fall. Scientists assume rotation. Objects spin. Odd shapes reflect light differently. That's how we map them. So they calculate the rotation period. Then they wait. But the timing doesn't drift. Rotation should wobble. Surface features should introduce noise. But this doesn't. The curve resets exactly where it should. Again and again and again. Someone overlays the data from 2 nights. They match perfectly. Different viewing angles, different instruments, same rhythm. The room gets quieter because coincidence can explain 1 match. 2 matches are interesting. 3 matches are a problem. The light curve doesn't just repeat, it stabilizes, like it found its preferred state. As if the object adjusted itself, then held the position. That's not how rocks behave. A rock doesn't care how it looks. A rock doesn't aim its shine. Yet here it is, shining, then dimming. On a schedule no one can explain. They check for outgassing. Comets eject material that reflects light unevenly. Jets can cause pulses. But there's no debris cloud, no visible tail, nothing spilling into space. Just a clean surface responding to the sun. Reflectivity is mapped across wavelengths. Visible, infrared, near ultraviolet. The pattern holds. The same rise, the same fall. Across the spectrum. That rules out most surface explanations. A rough surface would scatter light unpredictably. This surface doesn't. It behaves like it has zones, sections that activate, sections that rest. Someone suggests tumbling. A chaotic spin could mimic patterns, so they model it hundreds of times. The simulations fall apart quickly. Tumbling introduces randomness. This doesn't tolerate randomness. It resists it. The light curve tightens even more as 3I/Atlas approaches the sun. Instead of breaking down, it sharpens. The peaks become cleaner, the troughs deeper. Like a signal gaining confidence, like it's warming up. A quiet question floats through the lab. What if it's adjusting? No one answers. Because adjustment implies awareness, and awareness opens doors no one is ready to walk through. Still, the data keeps coming, and it keeps insisting. Reflectivity increases at the same solar angle every cycle, not distance. Angle. That matters. Distance would imply heating. Angle implies orientation. It knows where the sun is, and it responds accordingly. Someone tries to joke. Maybe it's solar-powered. The laugh dies quickly, because jokes are how people touch fear without admitting it. The light curve is shared across institutions. Independent verification begins. Different teams, different countries. Same result. The pattern survives scrutiny. No calibration error. No software glitch. No atmospheric interference. This is real. And it's consistent. The sun throws tantrums. Solar flares spike radiation. Space weather shifts constantly. Yet the object's reflectivity barely reacts. It compensates. Like a camera adjusting exposure. Brightness rises slightly, then corrects. Brightness drops, then stabilizes. A rock shouldn't be able to do that. A rock doesn't correct. Someone notices something chilling. The cycle length, is almost round, not mathematically perfect, but close. Close enough to feel deliberate, close enough to feel chosen. They don't publish that detail. They bury it in supplementary data. Because if the public hears precision, the next word they'll say is message. And no one wants that yet. The idea of a signal isn't new. We've searched for them for decades. Radio waves, laser pulses, mathematical beacons. Always from far away. Always abstract. This is different. This isn't a voice, it's behavior. An object responding to its environment with control, with restraint, with timing. The worst part? The pattern doesn't maximize brightness. If it wanted attention, it could shine harder. If it wanted stealth, it could stay dark. Instead, it chooses moderation. Enough to be seen, not enough to alarm. Like it understands thresholds, like it understands us. The closer 3I/Atlas gets, the more confident the pattern becomes. The margins tighten, the noise disappears, the light curve stops asking questions and starts answering them. Someone finally says it out loud. This looks like regulation, not intelligence, not communication, just regulation. As if the object maintains an internal state, as if it has rules. The room doesn't panic, it exhales. Because regulation is easier to swallow than intent. But deep down, everyone knows the difference is thin. If it can regulate light, what else can it regulate? Heat, motion, interaction. The sun doesn't dominate this object. It negotiates with it. That realization lingers, heavy, unwelcome. As the days pass, one final detail emerges. The light curve isn't just repeating, it's evolving. Small changes, micro shifts. Not errors, refinements. Like a system learning how to behave under closer observation. Learning how to exist here. That's when a quiet fear begins to surface. Not fear of danger, fear of meaning. Because if this object knows when to shine, then it knows when not to. And silence can be more intentional than noise. The graphs flatten briefly, just for a moment, as if the object is holding its breath, watching, waiting. And somewhere between those rising and falling lines, a question settles into every mind looking at the data. Since when does an object know when to shine? And more importantly, what happens when it decides to stop? At first, they call it noise, because noise is safe. Noise is the excuse we use when the universe does something we don't understand yet. Random spikes, sensor drift, cosmic interference. Every scientist has seen it 1,000 times. So when the brightness data from 3I/Atlas starts showing small, repeating bumps, no one reacts. Not immediately. They mark it, they annotate it, they move on. But the bumps don't go away. They don't smear out over time. They don't fade, they repeat. Soft pulses in brightness, barely noticeable unless you're looking closely, like a distant heartbeat. One observatory sees it first, a short rise, a pause, a fall, then silence. Then again, same spacing, same duration. They assume it's local, a calibration issue, a timing error. So they wait for confirmation. And that's when the second observatory reports the same thing. Different continent, different telescope, different software, same pulse, same timing. That's uncomfortable. But still, coincidence is possible. Until the third observatory sends their data, then the fourth, then the fifth. Across continents, across time zones, the pulse appears everywhere. At the same moment, that's when the word noise starts to feel dishonest. Because noise doesn't synchronize. Noise doesn't respect time. Noise doesn't wait. This does. The pulses are subtle. They don't scream. They don't spike wildly. They rise gently, hold, then fall back into silence. Over and over again. Like something tapping on glass. Not hard enough to break it, just hard enough to be noticed. Scientists zoom in. They stretch the timeline. The spacing between pulses is measured. Seconds. Not minutes, not hours. Seconds. Consistent within fractions. That detail sends a chill through the room. Because natural processes rarely keep time that well. Rotation introduces drift. Thermal cycles smear precision. Random forces creep in. But here, the silence between pulses is as precise as the pulse itself. Not just presence. Absence. That's the part that changes everything. The object isn't just doing something. It's choosing when to do nothing. The silence is clean, intentional, measured. If the pulses were messy, they could be ignored. If the silence varied, it could be dismissed. But both are controlled. Both repeat. Someone overlays Earth-based atomic clock timestamps. The alignment is disturbing. The pulses don't care where the telescope is. They don't care about Earth's rotation. They don't care about local conditions. They arrive when they arrive. Globally. As if the object is operating on its own clock. A clock we didn't build. A clock we don't understand. At first, no one wants to say it, because saying it gives it weight. So they use softer words. Periodicity, regular modulation, consistent signal artifact. But behind those words, something else is forming. A realization. This isn't random behavior. This is timing. And timing implies reference. Something is keeping time out there. The pulses aren't fast enough to be communication. Not slow enough to be thermal cycling. They sit in an uncomfortable middle, perfect for observation, perfect for detection, almost as if they were designed to be noticed, but not decoded. Someone checks solar activity. Maybe the sun is pulsing. It isn't. Solar flares don't match the rhythm. Someone checks planetary interference. Nothing lines up. Someone checks Earth-based contamination. The signal persists even when Earth rotates away. The object keeps pulsing even when we're not looking. That's unsettling because it means the pulses aren't reactive. They're autonomous. They don't care about us. Or they don't need to. A senior researcher finally asks the question everyone's been avoiding. If this is a signal, what is it measuring? No one answers, because measurement implies purpose, and purpose implies design. Still, the analysis continues. They plot the pulses against distance from the sun. No change. Against angle. No change. Against brightness. Minimal correlation. The pulses don't respond to external factors. They persist. Like a metronome in the dark. Tick. Silence. Tick. Silence. Each pause is the same length. That's the part that keeps people awake. Because silence is harder to fake than sound. Silence requires restraint. Something has to choose not to act. A natural system usually exhausts energy. It flares. It decays. It fades. This doesn't. It holds back, like it's conserving something, like it's waiting. The idea of a signal is discussed quietly, not in papers, not in meetings, in hallways, in private messages, late-night calls between people who trust each other. They don't talk about aliens. They talk about systems, about probes, about machines that don't announce themselves, machines that observe, that listen, that record. The pulses don't carry information we can decode. No math, no language, just presence, just timing, almost like a heartbeat, almost like a clock checking itself. Somebody points out something chilling. The pulse interval matches nothing in nature, but it matches something else. Human-designed systems, computers, satellites, control loops, feedback cycles. The resemblance is uncomfortable and dangerous, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. The object isn't flashing wildly. It isn't screaming into space. It's pulsing calmly, confidently, as if it knows time itself is a message, as if being consistent is enough, as if whoever needs to notice will. Then something changes. The pulses don't stop, but the silence between them grows heavier, because people start to notice the gaps. They start counting, waiting, anticipating. The absence becomes as loud as the presence. Every pause feels deliberate, like a held breath, like the space between words. And suddenly, the room feels different. Not curious, alert. Because when something unknown controls both action and inaction, it suggests restraint, and restraint suggests intelligence. No one wants to jump there, but no one can step back either. The data keeps arriving. The pulses keep time. The silence keeps time. And the universe feels quieter, as if it's giving space for something to speak, or for us to listen. The last pulse of the night fades. The screens go dark, and the silence lingers longer than expected. No one knows if that matters, but everyone feels it. Because if something out there is keeping time, the real question isn't how it ticks. The real question is, what happens when it decides the time is right? And what happens when the pulses stop altogether? Because silence is never empty, not when it's chosen. As 3I/Atlas moves closer to the sun, expectations return. This is the part scientists understand. Heat, radiation, stress. When an object approaches perihelion, the rules are simple. Sunlight hits harder. Surfaces warm. Ice sublimates. Temperature climbs. Physics doesn't argue here, so everyone expects the same outcome. A steady rise, predictable heating. Nothing surprising. At first, that's exactly what happens. Sensors record increasing warmth along the surface. Infrared readings climb smoothly. Models align. Relief settles in. Maybe this is where the mystery ends. But then, the data hesitates. Not stops, hesitates. One section of the object heats as expected. Another cools. That doesn't make sense. They double-check the instruments. Thermal sensors can drift. Calibration errors happen. So they reset. They cross-check with backup arrays. Same result. One side warms, another loses heat. At the same time, that's impossible. Heat doesn't behave like that in space. Not without help. Radiation spreads energy. Conduction equalizes it. A simple rock should glow more uniformly as it nears the sun. But 3I/Atlas doesn't. It redistributes, like something is moving energy internally. The word gradient appears in the notes, then disappears. Because gradients shouldn't sharpen under stress. They should blur. This one sharpens. The closer it gets to the sun, the clearer the thermal zones become. Hot regions grow hotter. Cool regions grow cooler. Side by side, separated by clean boundaries. Like compartments, someone whispers it without meaning to. That looks insulated. No one responds, because insulation implies structure, and structure implies design. They plot thermal patterns over time. They expect chaos near perihelion. Instead, they see cycles. The hot zones rotate into shadow, and instead of cooling naturally, they're cooled deliberately, faster than physics allows. Meanwhile, shaded regions warm slightly, as if heat is being moved, routed, managed. The object isn't fighting the sun, it's negotiating with it. Every known model breaks. Outgassing doesn't explain it. Phase changes don't explain it. Internal radioactivity doesn't explain it. Those processes are messy. This isn't. This is clean, controlled, purposeful. The sun throws energy at 3I/Atlas relentlessly. But the object doesn't absorb it evenly. It rejects some, redirects others, almost like it has preferences, almost like it has limits it refuses to cross. One thermal engineer stares at the visualization for a long time, then quietly closes their laptop. Later, they admit why. I've only seen behavior like that in systems that are trying to survive. That sentence never makes it into a report. Because survival implies vulnerability, and vulnerability implies life, or at least intent. Another idea surfaces. Maybe it's hollow. A cavity could change thermal flow, but hollow objects collapse under stress. This one doesn't. Its structure holds. Maybe it's porous, but porosity leads to random cooling. This is organized, selective, targeted. They notice something subtle. The thermal pattern syncs loosely with the light pulses. Not perfectly, but enough to suggest coordination. When reflectivity drops, heat shifts. When brightness rises, cooling follows. It's as if the object is balancing itself, maintaining an internal equilibrium. Like a body regulating temperature, that thought hangs in the air. Uncomfortable, unwelcome. A rock doesn't regulate. A rock reacts. But this object anticipates. Solar flares spike radiation unexpectedly. The sun misbehaves. The sensors prepare for chaos. Instead, the object compensates. Almost instantly. Heat spikes flatten. Temperature extremes are dampened, like shock absorbers, like safeguards. The models don't just fail. They embarrass themselves. Every assumption collapses. This isn't passive matter. This is a system, and systems have rules. Someone asks the simplest question. If it's not natural, what is it? No one answers. Because naming it would make it real. The data grows stranger. Thermal maps show internal flow patterns, not visible structure, but implied pathways, as if energy is being guided along channels we can't see. No vents, no plumes, no leaks, just movement. Silent movement. That's the part that unsettles everyone. There's no waste, no inefficiency. Everything that comes in is handled, managed, contained. As perihelion approaches, the sun should dominate. Gravity and radiation should overwhelm subtle behaviors. Instead, 3I/Atlas holds its shape, holds its pattern, holds its balance. It doesn't flinch. It doesn't burn. It doesn't scream. It endures. That endurance feels intentional, like the object has been here before. Not this sun, but a sun. Maybe many. Someone quietly suggests an idea that makes the room go still. What if perihelion is the point? What if this moment is the test? Closest approach. Maximum stress. Maximum exposure. A perfect moment to observe how a system responds. Not for us, for it. The idea that we're not the observers anymore. That we're the environment being measured. That thought changes the air. The temperature data continues to stream in. And one final detail slips through. At peak heating, the object cools its core. Not surface cooling, internal cooling. That shouldn't be possible. Not without active control. Not without energy expenditure. And energy expenditure means intention. Why would a rock protect its inside? Why would it care? The answer is simple and terrifying. Because you only protect what matters. Perihelion passes. The sun releases its grip slightly. The object emerges intact, unscarred, unchanged, almost relieved. The thermal patterns relax, not collapse. Relax. Like a system powering down after stress, the data tells a quiet story. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't lucky. This was preparation. And now that it's over, the question isn't how it survived. The question is why it needed to. Why would something built by chance behave like something built to last? Why would a rock manage its own temperature unless it was never just a rock at all? And if heat didn't destroy it, what else won't? Because whatever 3I/Atlas is, it just passed a test no natural object should survive. And it did so, calmly, silently, as if perihelion was never a threat, just another checkpoint on a path it already understood. A path that leads somewhere, and we're still standing in it. At some point, a mystery stops being personal. It stops belonging to one lab, one telescope, one late-night realization. And that's when it becomes dangerous. Because when everyone sees the same thing, denial runs out of places to hide. At first, each team assumes they're alone. Light anomalies in one dataset, thermal shifts in another, reflectivity cycles somewhere else, each strange on its own, each explainable, maybe. But science doesn't move on faith. It moves on comparison. So the emails start. Quiet ones. Careful ones. Are you seeing this too? Can you confirm? Just checking. Across continents, teams begin lining up their data. Different instruments, different methods, different assumptions. Same result. The light curve pulses. The heat redistributes. The reflectivity rises and falls together. Not drifting, not lagging, not contradicting. Aligned, like parts of a single system working in sync. That's the moment the anomaly grows teeth, because local errors disappear under global agreement. A glitch can fool one telescope. It can't fool all of them. And now, none of them disagree. Charts are stacked, timelines overlapped. The cycles line up almost perfectly. Light responds to heat. Heat follows reflectivity. Reflectivity syncs with pulse, round and round, not chaotic, ordered. Someone points at the screen and says the word no one wanted to hear. Feedback. That word changes everything. Feedback means response. Response means sensing. Sensing means awareness, not consciousness, not life, but something closer to control. The anomaly is no longer a strange reading. It's behavior, and behavior demands classification. That's where the trouble starts, because every natural category begins to fail. Asteroid, too controlled. Comet, no tail, no chaos. Fragment of a shattered world, fragments don't regulate. Dust cloud, dust doesn't pulse. Every box rejects it. And when an object doesn't fit a category, we usually create a new one. But no one wants to name this. Not yet, so the language bends. Highly unusual, unprecedented coupling, non-random correlation, professional words. Safe words. Words that avoid the real question. Because the real question isn't what it does, it's why it does it. The cycles don't maximize efficiency. They don't minimize exposure. They balance. That's the unsettling part. Balance implies limits. Limits imply intention. Someone runs a statistical analysis. The chance of all these variables aligning naturally is small. Very small. Small enough to be uncomfortable. Small enough to whisper something louder than coincidence. And still, no one panics. Because panic would mean admitting something irreversible. Instead, the reaction is slower, heavier, a growing sense of pressure, as if everyone feels the same thought forming. But no one wants to be the first to say it. The anomaly becomes a topic at conferences. Not on stage. In hallways. In corners. Over coffee. People lower their voices. Not because they're afraid of being overheard, but because saying it out loud makes it real. If this isn't natural, someone asks quietly, then what is it? No one answers, because the next category isn't scientific, it's philosophical. Is it a machine? Machines are built. Built things have builders. That road goes places. Science isn't ready to walk publicly. Is it a probe? Probes observe. They don't announce themselves. They don't explain. They just watch. That idea sits heavily, because watching goes both ways. The anomaly continues to grow, not in intensity, but in certainty. Each passing day removes another excuse. Another model collapses. Another explanation fails quietly. The object isn't changing its behavior. We are. We're the ones adjusting language, adjusting expectations, adjusting belief. That's how paradigm shifts begin. Not with explosions, with silence, with people realizing they can no longer pretend the old answers work. The data doesn't scream alien. It doesn't wave flags. It does something far worse. It behaves. Calmly, consistently, like a system that knows what it's doing. And systems don't exist without reason. The final blow comes when teams try to isolate variables. They attempt to break the cycle, remove light data. The heat pattern still cycles. Remove thermal data. The reflectivity still pulses. Remove reflectivity. The timing remains. Independent, yet coordinated. That shouldn't happen. Not naturally. It's as if each system can operate alone, but prefers to operate together. Like redundant components. Like design. The word is never written down. but it's there, hanging over every screen, every meeting, every pause. Artificial, not in the sense of metal and wires, but in the sense of intention, of arrangement, of something assembled rather than formed. That's the difference that matters. The anomaly isn't growing louder, it's growing clearer, and clarity is dangerous, because clarity forces choice. Ignore it or confront what it implies. And confronting it means accepting a truth humanity has avoided for a long time, that not everything in the universe is accidental, that some things may arrive with purpose, and that purpose may have nothing to do with us. 3I/Atlas continues on its path, unbothered, unchanged, while on Earth, the conversation shifts from what is wrong with the data to what is the data trying to tell us. The anomaly is no longer something happening to the object. It's something the object is doing. And once you accept that, the question is no longer whether this is natural. The question becomes much harder. If this isn't a natural process, what category does it belong to? And are we ready to invent that category, knowing it might also define us? Because from this moment on, we are no longer just discovering something new. We are standing at the edge of a realization. And once you step past that edge, there is no going back. The word doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't echo through conference halls. It doesn't appear in papers or headlines. It slips in quietly, almost by accident, artificial. No one announces it. No one claims it. It's spoken the way people speak forbidden thoughts, carefully, casually, as if testing whether the air will change when it's released. At first, it's framed as a thought experiment. Let's assume for a moment, what if, hypothetically, just to rule things out, science has always used these phrases as shields, because words are dangerous. And this one most of all. Artificial doesn't mean alien. Not yet. It doesn't mean intelligent. Not yet. It simply means not natural. And that distinction matters because nature is messy. Nature wastes energy. Nature doesn't care if it's understood. But what they're seeing with 3I/Atlas, it cares. Not emotionally, not consciously, but structurally. The patterns are too clean, too restrained, too patient. And patience is the hardest thing to explain naturally. A random object doesn't wait. It reacts. It flares. It burns. It breaks. This object doesn't. It behaves like something built to endure observation. The conversations move behind closed doors, not because of secrecy, but because of responsibility. No one wants to be the person who says it first. No one wants their name attached to a sentence that might redefine humanity's place in the universe. So they talk in whispers, in hypotheticals, in pauses that stretch just a little too long. Someone asks a quiet question. At what point does pattern stop being coincidence? No one answers right away. Because everyone has a different threshold. For some, it's one anomaly. For others, it's 10. For a few, it's the feeling. The feeling that the data isn't asking to be explained. It's asking to be recognized. They revisit the basics. Artificial systems don't have to be complex. They don't need antennas or engines. They just need constraints, rules, boundaries that nature doesn't care about, but builders do. And 3I/Atlas is full of boundaries, thermal limits that are never crossed, light levels that never spike too far, timing that never drifts beyond tolerance. Those are choices. even if no mind is making them, even if the system has been running longer than memory. Artificial doesn't mean new. It could be ancient, older than our sun, older than our species. A relic, a probe, a machine that doesn't know we exist, but still follows its purpose. That idea lands heavily because it reframes everything. This wouldn't be a message sent to us. It would be a system passing through us, and that makes it harder to feel special. Someone brings up an uncomfortable comparison. If we saw this behavior in orbit around Earth, what would we call it? No one wants to answer, because the answer is obvious. We'd call it hardware. We'd assume intent. We'd track it obsessively. The only reason this feels different is distance, and distance doesn't change truth. It only delays it. The whispers grow louder, still private, still cautious, but no longer rare. Artificial becomes a placeholder word, a way to gesture towards something without naming it, like pointing at a shadow and saying, "Whatever made that?" The fear isn't invasion. The fear isn't attack. The fear is humility, because an artificial object that doesn't announce itself, that doesn't explain itself, that doesn't care whether it's understood, is far more unsettling than something that demands attention. It suggests a universe already busy, already structured, already filled with systems that operate without us in mind. And that's hard to accept. The idea of design raises another question. Design implies origin, but no origin fits. Not nearby stars. Not known civilizations. The timescales stretch uncomfortably far. This thing could have been traveling for millions of years. Coasting, waiting, passing through systems like ours, without leaving a trace. And now, for the first time, we noticed. Or maybe it noticed we finally could. That thought never gets written down, but it changes how people look at the data. They stop asking, "What is it made of?" and start asking, "What is it for?" Purpose creeps in through the cracks, and purpose is where science meets philosophy. Is it observing? Is it measuring stellar systems? Is it cataloging? Or is it something simpler? A test, a system that responds to stimuli. Light, heat, gravity, recording how environments behave under stress. If that's true, then our solar system is just another data point, nothing more, nothing less. That realization hurts more than fear, because fear assumes importance. Indifference does not. The whispers reach a quiet consensus. No declarations, no votes, just a shared understanding. Whatever 3I/Atlas is, calling it just a rock, is no longer honest. Artificial doesn't feel like an accusation anymore. It feels like the least wrong word available. Still, restraint holds. No public statements, no dramatic claims. Because once that word leaves the room, you can't put it back, and the world isn't ready yet. The object continues its journey, still pulsing, still regulating, still silent, as if unaware of the conversations happening millions of miles away. Or perfectly aware. That's the line no one crosses. Yet, at what point does pattern become design? There's no formula for that, no equation. It's a human judgment. A moment when explanation stops reducing uncertainty and starts increasing it. That moment is getting closer. Every cycle sharpens the question. Every successful prediction deepens the unease. because the more predictable the object becomes, the less natural it feels. Nature surprises us. Design reassures, and this object is doing something terrifying. It's reassuring us that it will continue behaving exactly as expected. That calm, that control, that silence. Those are not the traits of chaos. They are the traits of something that was made to last. And once that idea takes root, once artificial stops sounding absurd, the universe feels different. Closer, more intentional, less empty. And the biggest question is no longer what is it? It's this. If pattern has already crossed into design, how long before design crosses into intention? And when it does, will we recognize it in time, or will we only understand after the whispers stop being whispers at all? The idea doesn't arrive as a revelation. It arrives as resignation. After weeks of arguing around the edges, after every natural explanation bends and breaks, someone finally says what everyone has been circling. Maybe it's a machine. Not a ship, not a craft. A machine. The room reacts instantly. Some lean back, some shake their heads, some stare at the floor like the word itself weighs too much. Because a machine doesn't need passengers. It doesn't need intent in the way we understand it. It just needs function. And that's the problem. 3I/Atlas behaves like something with function. The proposal is careful. No engines. No metal hulls. No flashing lights. This wouldn't be science fiction. It would be something older, simpler, more terrifying. A structure shaped by rules we didn't invent. A system designed to operate without supervision. Ancient, silent, adaptive. A machine that doesn't travel to places, but through them. Someone pushes back immediately. Machines leave signatures. They break. They degrade. They fail. That's true. Human machines do. But then someone asks the quiet follow-up. What if this isn't a human machine? What if it wasn't built fast but slow? Layer by layer, over timescales we don't experience. What if it wasn't designed to impress, but to persist? That idea changes the frame. This wouldn't be a device meant to communicate. It wouldn't even care if it was detected. It would just execute its function. Calmly, endlessly, the light regulation, the thermal control, the rhythmic pulses. Those aren't messages. They're processes, feedback loops, control systems, the kind engineers dream about and never fully achieve. Someone points out something unsettling. The object doesn't maximize efficiency. It minimizes risk. That's not how nature works. Nature doesn't play it safe. Nature overshoots, then corrects violently. This doesn't. It stays within margins. Margins are a machine's language. The rejection is loud. This is anthropomorphizing. We're projecting. We're seeing patterns because we want to. And maybe that's true. Humans are excellent at finding faces in clouds. But clouds don't regulate heat. Clouds don't pulse on schedule. Clouds don't adjust to stress. This thing does. Another scientist brings up an uncomfortable comparison. If we launched something like this and found it centuries later, how would it behave? The answer is obvious. Quietly, automatically, following rules written long ago. That thought sinks in slowly. The machine hypothesis doesn't require intelligence. It doesn't require awareness, just persistence. A system that reacts to inputs, light, heat, gravity, and produces outputs, regulation, stability, motion, nothing more, nothing less. That makes it harder to dismiss, because intelligence can be argued away. But function leaves fingerprints, and the fingerprints are everywhere. Someone notices something chilling. The object doesn't optimize for our instruments. It doesn't try to be seen, but it also doesn't hide. It exists at a level of visibility that feels indifferent, like it was never designed with observers in mind. That's exactly how machines behave. They don't care who watches. They only care that the process continues. A machine doesn't panic under scrutiny. It doesn't change behavior to please. It doesn't react emotionally. It just runs. And that's exactly what 3i/Atlas has been doing, running. The more people resist the idea, the more it lingers. Because rejection doesn't erase evidence. It just delays acceptance. Someone asks the most dangerous question yet. If it's a machine, what does it do? No one knows. And that's the most honest answer so far. It could be observational, cataloging stellar systems, recording data over millions of years. It could be navigational, mapping gravitational fields, testing cosmic environments. Or it could be something stranger, a self-correcting relic, a system left behind when its creators vanished, still doing its job long after the reason was forgotten. That idea is hard to swallow because it suggests something worse than invasion. It suggests abandonment, a universe filled with machines whose builders are gone, still moving, still measuring, still watching. We're not special. We're incidental. Another variable. The rejection continues publicly. No statements, no confirmations, because once you say machine, you invite panic. But privately, the word sticks. It explains too much. It explains the restraint, the patience, the refusal to break under stress, the way perihelion wasn't a crisis, just a condition. Machines don't fear the sun. They're built to endure it. Another detail adds weight. The object doesn't communicate. That bothers people, because if something wanted contact, it would reach out. But machines don't need contact. They don't seek validation. They don't care if they're understood. They just exist. The silence becomes part of the hypothesis. Not absence, but confirmation. A true machine wouldn't speak. It wouldn't explain. It wouldn't warn. It would let reality do the talking, and reality is speaking loudly now. Those who reject the idea hold on to one hope: that machines have limits, that systems fail, that nothing runs forever. That's true, eventually. But eventually, in cosmic time, could mean billions of years. Longer than our entire species. Longer than memory. The most unsettling possibility settles in quietly. What if this machine wasn't sent? What if it wasn't built to come here? What if it's part of something larger? A network? A lattice? Systems crossing the galaxy silently, not exploring, not conquering, just existing, maintaining, observing. If that's true, then finding one doesn't mean we're special. It means we've finally looked closely enough. The room grows quiet again. Because whether you accept the hypothesis or not, The behavior doesn't change. 3I/Atlas keeps doing what it's always done. Pulsing, regulating, passing through, unimpressed by our debates, unaware of our fear, or worse, fully aware and completely uninterested. That's the hardest part to accept. A machine that doesn't care, not hostile, not friendly, just functional. If it isn't a machine, then we need a new word, because rocks don't do this. Comets don't do this. Chance doesn't do this. Something built behaves like something built. And until a better explanation survives contact with the data, the machine hypothesis lingers. Unproven, uncomfortable, unavoidable. Because the more we watch 3I/Atlas, the less it looks like an accident, and the more it looks like something still doing its job, long after anyone stopped watching it, except us. Now, too late to look away, and still asking the question that won't let go. If this isn't a machine, why does it behave like one? And what does it mean? That it keeps working, no matter who notices. It doesn't break all at once. There's no announcement, no emergency broadcast, no official confession. The information leaks the way water always does, through cracks. A sentence here, a chart there, a clipped quote taken out of context. At first, the public barely notices. Another space story. Another strange object. Another headline that sounds big but feels distant. People scroll past it. They always do. But then the tone changes. Not in the data, in the reactions. A respected astronomer hesitates during an interview. A space agency delays a routine update. A paper is published, then quietly amended. Nothing dramatic, just enough to feel wrong. That's when curiosity turns into unease. Forums light up first, not with panic, with questions. Why is everyone being careful with their words? Why does no one explain the pulses clearly? Why does the object seem to behave? Old footage of 3I/Atlas is rewatched. New graphics appear, the light curve, the pulses, the thermal maps. People don't understand the math. They don't need to. They understand rhythm. They understand repetition. They understand when something feels intentional. And this feels intentional. At first, it's framed as wonder. How amazing is the universe? Look how strange space can be. But wonder doesn't last long when patterns don't resolve. Wonder fades. Suspicion takes its place. We've spent decades scanning the sky for signals. Radio waves, laser flashes, repeating numbers. We trained ourselves to expect communication to look like language, like sound, like speech. We never considered the possibility that the message wouldn't speak, that it wouldn't transmit, that it would simply arrive, an object, silent, behaving in ways that don't fit nature. That thought spreads quickly. Memes appear, then disappear. Videos speculate, then get taken down. The public doesn't hear everything, but it hears enough. And humans are very good at filling gaps. Fear doesn't explode, it settles. People start looking up at the sky differently, not searching, watching. The phrase interstellar object doesn't feel neutral anymore. It feels personal. Like something crossed a boundary it wasn't invited to cross. Late-night shows joke about it. The jokes don't land, because humor needs distance. And this feels close. Too close. Someone asks the question that breaks the mood completely. What if the object is the signal? That idea changes everything. Because a signal can be ignored. An object cannot. You can shut off a radio. You can't turn away from something physically passing through your system, something obeying its own rules, something unaffected by attention. The public reaction splits quietly. Some feel excitement. Proof we're not alone. Proof the universe is busy. Others feel something colder, a loss of control. Because control comes from understanding, and understanding is slipping. Religious leaders weigh in carefully. Philosophers write essays. Scientists urge patience. Everyone says the same thing in different ways. We don't know yet, but not knowing hits differently now, because this isn't abstract. This is happening. Right now, 3I/Atlas is still there. Still moving, still pulsing, still regulating itself, as if nothing on Earth matters. That's what unsettles people the most. Indifference. If something meant harm, at least we could prepare. If something meant contact, at least we could respond. But this feels like being walked past without a glance. Like ants watching a boot step over them. Not crushed, not acknowledged, just irrelevant. The comparison hurts. Because we've always imagined ourselves as observers, standing outside the universe, watching, measuring, labeling. Now that role feels uncertain, because the object doesn't react to observation. It doesn't change when we notice it. It doesn't accelerate. It doesn't hide. It doesn't communicate. It behaves as if observation was expected, as if it was accounted for. That's when a more disturbing idea takes hold. What if we're not the observers anymore? What if we're the environment? A variable, a data point, something being passed through and recorded. That idea spreads quietly, not as panic, as discomfort. People don't riot. They don't scream. They feel small. And feeling small is more destabilizing than fear. News outlets invite experts. Experts choose words carefully. They emphasize uncertainty. They downplay speculation. But every careful sentence feels heavier than the last, because careful language suggests fragile truth. The more cautious the tone becomes, the more people sense there's something underneath it. Social media fills in the rest. Bad theories, wild guesses, some laughable, some uncomfortably close. But one idea sticks. We didn't find a signal. The signal found us. Not intentionally, not maliciously, just as a consequence of being here, of existing, of finally having eyes sharp enough to notice. That reframes everything. All our searching, all our listening. We were looking for someone to talk to us. We never considered being noticed silently, being passed by, being studied without consent. That idea is hard to shake, because if this object is a system, a machine, then it doesn't need our approval. It doesn't need to announce itself. It just needs to function, and it is functioning perfectly. People start asking quieter questions. If something can pass through our system unnoticed for so long, what else already has? If this is one machine, are there more? And if this one is ancient, how many times has it done this before? Those questions don't trend, but they linger. In conversations, in late-night thoughts, in the pause before sleep. The public mood shifts subtly, not to panic, to vigilance. A new awareness settles in. The universe doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels populated, not with beings, but with processes, with systems older than stories. The object continues on its path. Still silent, still precise, still uninterested in our reaction. And that indifference becomes the loudest message of all, because it forces a realization we've avoided for centuries. We may not be the main characters. We may not even be the audience. We might be part of the experiment, a brief condition, a warm system, a source of data. The thought is unsettling, but clarifying. It strips away fantasy. It replaces it with humility. And humility is hard for a species raised on importance. As 3I/Atlas moves farther along its path, the chatter grows quieter. Not because interest fades, but because words feel insufficient. Because when an object becomes the message, there's nothing left to decode, only to accept. The final question hangs in the air, unanswered, unavoidable. Are we still observers, or have we crossed the invisible line where observation turned inward, where the universe stopped being something we study and became something that studies us? Because if that line has already been crossed, then the most important reaction isn't fear, it's awareness. And awareness changes everything, whether we're ready for it or not. The moment everyone was watching for arrives without drama. No flash, no warning, no final signal, just silence. As 3I/Atlas reaches perihelion, its closest pass to the sun, every system on Earth is locked in. Telescopes track it, minute by minute. Sensors strain for change. This is where things should break. Heat should peak. Radiation should spike. Instability should explode across the data. Instead, everything goes flat. The pulses stop, not slowly, not gradually. They stop. The rhythmic rise and fall in brightness, gone. The carefully timed intervals, gone. The pattern that refused to drift for weeks, erased in a single moment. The light curve smooths out, not chaotic, not noisy, flat, like a calm sea after a storm that never arrived. At first, no one believes it. They assume a failure, a dropped feed, a corrupted packet, a clock error. So they check, and check again. Backup systems confirm it. Independent observatories confirm it. Different wavelengths confirm it. The signal is gone. Completely. The object is still there. Still visible. Still moving. Still reflecting sunlight. But the behavior is different now. Passive. Unremarkable. Exactly what scientists expected it to be before everything changed. That's what makes it terrifying. That's what makes it terrifying. For weeks, the object behaved like a system. Now it behaves like a rock, and that transition happens at the worst possible moment. Right at perihelion. Right when stress should be highest. Right when systems should struggle the most. Instead, it goes quiet. Someone finally says it out loud. It shut off. The word hangs in the room. Shut off implies function. Function implies purpose. Purpose implies completion. Others push back. No, it exhausted its energy. That's what happens near the sun. But the data disagrees. Energy levels are fine. Thermal balance holds. Structural integrity remains intact. Nothing is failing. Nothing is breaking. It didn't collapse. It didn't burn out. It stopped. That distinction matters, because systems fail messily. They sputter. They glitch. They degrade. This didn't. This ended cleanly, like a process reaching its final line of code. The light curve stays flat longer than expected. Minutes pass, then hours. Still nothing. No pulses, no regulation shifts, no anomalies. Just a silent object continuing on its path, as if the most important part of the journey is already over. The realization settles slowly, uncomfortably. Whatever it was doing, it's done now. The timing is impossible to ignore. The shutdown aligns almost perfectly with perihelion passage. Not before, not long after. At the exact point of closest approach, as if that moment mattered. As if everything leading up to it was preparation, and everything after it is aftermath. Someone asks the question no one wants to answer. What if perihelion was the objective? What if the sun wasn't a threat, but a trigger, a condition that needed to be met? Maximum radiation, maximum gravitational stress, maximum exposure, a perfect moment to record something, or to activate something, or to complete something. The silence feels heavier than the pulses ever did, because pulses invited interpretation. Silence invites implication. People start replaying the data. Backwards. They notice things they missed before, subtle changes in behavior leading up to perihelion, micro adjustments, refinements, like a system aligning itself. Preparing and then release. The idea forms quietly. Unwelcome. What if the object wasn't reacting to the sun, but using it? What if perihelion wasn't danger, but fuel, or calibration, or a checkpoint? The shutdown doesn't feel like defeat. It feels like success. And success is harder to live with, because failure would have been comforting. Failure would mean limits. Failure would mean safety. But this feels like completion. The public notices the change quickly. The pulses had become familiar. People were watching, waiting, counting, and then they weren't there anymore. News headlines struggle to explain it. Experts choose careful language, natural variation, expected transition. But the words don't match the mood. Because something that felt alive now feels empty. And emptiness after presence is always unsettling. Social media reacts faster than institutions. Why did it stop? Did it notice us? Is this good or bad? No one has answers, and silence from experts feels louder than any alarm. People had started to adjust to the idea of being observed. Now they're forced to adjust again, to the idea of being finished with. That's worse, because being watched is scary. But being dismissed, that cuts deeper. The object continues away from the sun. Outbound now, its trajectory unchanged, its behavior boring. No pulses, no anomalies, just motion. As if nothing unusual ever happened. As if weeks of precision never existed. As if the universe blinked and moved on. Some scientists cling to relief. See, they say quietly. Back to normal. But relief doesn't spread. Because normal doesn't explain why it ever changed at all. Normal doesn't explain why it stopped exactly when it did. Normal doesn't explain intention disguised as coincidence. A haunting possibility settles in. What if the pulses weren't communication? What if they weren't observation? What if they were self-checks, diagnostics? A system waking up, running tests, confirming stability, and then shutting down, not because it failed, but because it succeeded. That idea reframes the silence. It's not emptiness, it's confirmation, like a machine finishing a scan and powering down to conserve energy, like something that has learned what it needed to learn. The thought spreads quietly. If that's true, then the most important moment already happened, and we missed it. Or worse, we witnessed it without understanding. The sun drifts behind the object now. The distance grows. The chance to provoke another response fades. And that loss feels permanent, because whatever triggered the behavior is behind us. We passed through the window, and the window closed. The silence continues. Day after day, still nothing. No new patterns, no reactivation, no hint of acknowledgement, just a cold object receding into darkness. That's when the final question emerges, not shouted, not debated, felt. Did it shut down, or did it finish what it came to do? Because if it finished, then we weren't the audience. We were the environment, the condition, the test case. And now that the test is complete, the system no longer needs to run. That thought lingers as 3I/Atlas fades slowly from view, still visible, but unremarkable. A stone again. And that transformation is the most unsettling data point of all, because the universe didn't answer our questions. It didn't explain itself. It didn't leave a message. It simply did what it needed to do and moved on, leaving us with silence and the understanding that silence, too, can be deliberate. That sometimes the loudest conclusion is the moment something stops responding. And whatever happened at perihelion, whatever process ended there, we may never know. Because the object isn't looking back, and the signal was never meant to last forever. It was only meant to last until it was no longer needed. It leaves the way it arrived, quietly. No farewell, no explanation, no final signal to mark the moment. 3I/Atlas continues outward, away from the sun, away from scrutiny, away from us, a shrinking point of light, still visible, but already slipping beyond relevance. The instruments keep tracking it, out of habit more than hope. But the data has changed, not because it's gone, because it's finished. What remains now isn't discovery, it's aftermath. Hard drives fill with numbers. Charts are archived. Papers are drafted, revised, softened. Everything that can be measured has been measured. Everything that can be confirmed has been confirmed. And yet, nothing feels complete, because origin remains untouched. No star system fits. No timeline holds. No natural story explains the whole. The beginning of 3I/Atlas is a blank space, and blank spaces bother us more than wrong answers. Scientists debate quietly. Some argue restraint. We don't have enough information. Others argue perspective. Maybe we never will. That idea lands heavier than anyone expects, because humanity is built on the belief that with enough time, enough tools, enough intelligence, everything can be understood. 3I/Atlas challenges that belief. Not aggressively, just passively, by existing without explanation. The data tells us what it did, not where it came from, not who built it, not why it behaved the way it did, only that it did. And that's enough to change us, because for the first time, we're forced to sit with a possibility that doesn't center us. What if this wasn't about us at all? What if our solar system was just a place on a long path? A warm region, a stable star, a useful environment, one stop among countless others. That idea is humbling, and humility is unfamiliar territory. We replay the timeline again and again. The discovery, the path, the light curve, the pulses, the heat regulation, the silence. Each chapter makes sense on its own. Together, they tell a story we don't like to finish. A story where intelligence doesn't announce itself, where technology doesn't seek contact, where awareness doesn't care about recognition. A story where something older, something patient, passed through our home without asking permission, and left without explanation. People ask the same question in different ways. Was it watching us? Did it notice Earth? Did it record life? The honest answer is the hardest one. We don't know if we mattered, and that uncertainty lingers longer than fear, because fear assumes significance. Indifference suggests scale. The universe suddenly feels older, larger, more structured than we imagined. Not empty, not chaotic, but filled with processes that don't revolve around us. That realization quietly changes the conversation. Science doesn't stop. It sharpens. Search strategies evolve. We stop looking only for messages. We start watching behavior. We stop asking who is talking to us and start asking what is passing through. The idea of contact shifts. Maybe first contact doesn't come as a greeting. Maybe it comes as a shadow, something moving through our system, following rules written before Earth had oceans. And maybe noticing it wasn't the beginning of the story. Maybe it was the end of one. A test completed, a system satisfied, a machine or process continuing onward, carrying its truth somewhere else, somewhere we'll never see. The most unsettling part isn't what we don't know. It's what we learned about ourselves, that we assumed discovery meant importance, that we believed observation flowed one way, that the universe was waiting for us to listen. 3I/Atlas suggests a quieter truth. The universe doesn't wait, it moves, and sometimes it passes close enough for us to notice, not to be spoken to. Not to be warned, just to be reminded. We are not the first to look up. We are not the first to build tools. We may not even be the first to wonder. The object fades further into darkness now. Soon it will be too faint to track, too distant to matter. Another entry in a catalogue, another mystery marked unsolved. Focus, but something fundamental has shifted. We can't unknow what we saw. We can't pretend the patterns were coincidence. We can't return to the comfort of believing the universe is quiet because no one else is there. Silence doesn't mean absence anymore. It means restraint. It means patience. It means something chose not to speak. The final realization settles slowly, uncomfortably. What if we weren't searching too early, but too late? What if systems like this have passed through countless worlds, long before we learned how to watch? What if the universe has been noticing life for billions of years, while life only just learned how to notice back? That flips the story. We're not pioneers. We're latecomers, just beginning to see the traffic passing through cosmic space, just beginning to understand that not everything unknown is meant to be understood. 3I/Atlas continues outward now, silent, unchanged, carrying whatever truth it holds far beyond our reach. And we're left behind, with data, with questions, with a new awareness we didn't ask for. The universe feels closer now, not because it spoke, but because it didn't need to. And the final question remains unanswered, unavoidable. What if the universe noticed us first? And what if this was only the moment we finally noticed it noticing us? Because once that thought takes hold, once you accept that awareness may not be exclusive, the night sky never looks the same again. Not empty, not waiting, but active, watching, moving, and full of paths we've only just begun to see. Some leading away forever, and some passing right through us.